And here we are getting started. We've got about a minute here in this opening cutscene before players have any real inputs, so just a little bit of background. Both DRock and Ryntrussell, their Boogie percent PBs are just about 15-20 seconds apart, and their race averages are about 1 minute apart. So we should be looking forward to a very good race here today. Typically, these Boogie percent races, world record is 1 hour, 3 minutes, 29 seconds. Typically, I would expect a Boogie percent race to end somewhere between 1 hour and 10 minutes to 1 hour 20 minutes. You'll see both players here grabbing the cracked bat out of Tracy's room. The game will actually not allow you to progress if you do not grab that cracked bat out of the present. So early on here, Ness is walking up the hill to investigate the sound he heard, what woke him up out of bed. Your first walk up this hill, spawns are disabled. So it takes about 4 minutes before we get into the first section where the players actually have to respond to what the game throws at them. The Boogie percent race category is essentially a smaller version of the full glitchless category. It is a race up to defeating the Boogie tent. It takes about 1/4 of the time of a full glitchless run. So it's a way to get started with speedrunning Earthbound. You only have to learn the first quarter of the game. It gives you a pretty good idea of how the entire speedrun goes. You have some execution-heavy segments, and you have some randomness that you also have to deal with. It's a good starting point for learning the entire glitchless category. And the timing goes from pressing Yep on the name select screen and starting the very first cutscene up to collecting the fly honey after you've defeated the Boogie tent. And it's always fun to see. You can see a little bit of the streamer's personality even on just the game feeds here. You can choose the window colors, and it has no bearing on the actual gameplay of the game whatsoever, even including any kind of RNG manipulation. Doesn't matter, personal preference. So you can see DRock has chosen the slightly thicker mint window borders, while Ryntrussell has stayed with the plain. Spawns are random in Earthbound. Some runners, most top-tier runners, use RNG manipulation and control when and where spawns will occur, but that is not allowed in the Boogie percent tournament because, again, we want it to be very open to beginners. So as soon as they step out of the house here after talking to Dad, this will be the first opportunity for these players to interact with the randomness in this game. And you can see DRock, 2 dogs right outside the front door, but he's going to use that bush to get them caught, using the terrain to his advantage. Ryntrussell opting to despawn the enemies instead. The issue with using terrain to block enemies is that you can get yourself pincered as DRock has, and it looks like he'll be forced to fight one of these dogs. Getting in a fight on the Onet Hill climb is a bit of a time loss. However, you do have the benefit of the extra experience. It will give you an extra level against the first Poco Punk, who, if you get very unlucky, can be lethal no matter what you do, and that kind of helps avoid that situation. So there's good and bad. Rin's struggling a bit with that, what's likely to be the last dog on the hill climb. That's the last likely spawn. Spawns can occur all the way up through the house that you see Ryntrussell there. It's the house right there, Liar Exaggerate's house. Ryntrussell entering the next cutscene of the game, where Buzz joins your party and gives you a little bit of plot exposition, telling you that you're one of the chosen four and you're destined to save the world. Looks like DRock lost maybe about 30 seconds or so from his dogfight in his somewhat unfortunate spawns. Something to get used to, though, if you're used to watching other speed games and you're watching Earthbound for perhaps the first time or one of the first few times, it's very easy to lose 30 seconds or your entire minutes at a time in Earthbound, and very easy to also make that time back up. So a 30-second lag between the runners is small, not insignificant, but easily recovered by either runner. Ryntrussell now entering the fight with Starman Jr. Starman Jr. is a very scripted fight, and you have Buzz in your party. It is it's impossible in the normal course of gameplay to lose this fight. However, you can lose a lot of time in this fight. If you're really dedicated, you can purposely lose the fight if you level up Ness enough and you learn a physical shield and you overwrite Buzz's psychic shield. Not really possible in a speedrun setting. Just a little piece of trivia. What you're looking for here when you're fighting Starman Jr., you're really hoping that Buzz will charge forward. It's his stronger attack. But this fight against Starman Jr., we call it a 2-cycle, each cycle being each time Buzz takes an attack. So the scripted fight will go, Buzz will use a shield, Buzz will attack. Buzz will use a shield, Buzz will use an attack. 2 cycles is the best possible outcome. I've seen fights go as long as 4 or even 5 cycles, though. I believe Ness learns his physical shield maybe at level 11, level 12, level 10, right in that range. So it's quite a bit of a grind, since all you have to grind on are dogs, birds, and snakes. You're only getting 4 XP at a time at most. DRock catching a small bit of time in that Starman Jr. fight. The other part of randomness in that fight, you're also hoping to see Starman Jr. use either freeze attacks or guarding if it's not a turn where Buzz is attacking. Those attacks take much less time than all of the text of taking a fire attack and watching all of your party members have the attack nullified by a psychic shield. If you die to Starman, it gives you the normal death prompt, and you reappear where you last saved. If you did not make a save, the game actually saves for you when you answer the phone for Dad the first time. So you will wake up in Ness's house. You'll still have Buzz Buzz in your party, and you can actually walk over to the Minch's house and continue on with the game. Buzz Buzz gives you the last bit of expository here. He gives you the Sound Stone, telling you that you need to collect all 8 melodies. We're only going to see 1 in the Boogie Percent tournament, however. Rin with good observation there. There was a snake hiding behind that tree, and he caught it in time. You can see him kind of stuttering forward using a technique called stutter stepping. If you press the D-pad in the direction you'd like to move for very short periods of time and then let go, the game will actually fail to move enemies that move based on when you move. And you'll see that technique used a lot throughout this run. Same thing with DRock there, stutter stepping around a snake. We use the Mr. Baseball cap found in that house there. It is a good defensive item at this point in the game. However, it's also worth a good deal of money, and we're much better off simply selling the cap and getting the 1 defense worse regular baseball cap, and also buying a cheap bracelet, which is what you'll see Ryntrussell doing here. He'll also buy a T-ball bat, so he has the offense to take on Sharks and Frank. If you get into no fights on the hill climb, you have exactly enough money to purchase all of those items, as long as you get the Mr. Baseball cap. Ryntrussell taking a little bit of unique movement there. It looks like he may have kind of walked out of the way to come down to the arcade here and fight this first Pogo Punk. However, walking that specific route tends to encourage fewer shark spawns, we found. It's based on a quirk in the game's programming. DRock, you can see, also walking a similar path here. The Pogo Punks can actually be rather rough fights. When they charge forward, they can hit an S for around 14 damage. The saving grace is that their accuracy tends to be rather low. So if you get very unlucky, that first and even second Pogo Punk can kill you and set you back about a minute to a minute and a half. However, typically, they either simply they use a regular bash attack, throwing a punch, and that does maybe roughly 7 damage instead, much lower. Or they continue to charge forward and miss. Is it Ryan? I'm so sorry. Ryan in the fight here with Frank. What you're hoping to see with Frank is him saying something nasty, as he did just there, which lowers your guts value. Guts is used to... it determines how likely you are to get a smash attack, which is the equivalent of a critical hit in most other RPGs. Frank can also come out swinging, which is his slightly weaker attack, and he can also use a knife. If he uses any kind of damage-dealing attack, your strategy should be to heal, because his next attack can possibly be lethal. DRock catching just up a little bit more in that Frank fight. Looks like the two racers are just about tied. You can see there Ryan opting to life up before Frankenstein throws his punch. He didn't want to risk the chance that Frankenstein could hit for 20 or more damage, and it would be very unlikely he would be able to pull off his heal in time. So Ryan playing it a little bit safer, falling behind slightly as a result. DRock had a lucky smash on Frankenstein that helped him to pull ahead as well. And just like that, you can see how quickly a lead change can occur in Earthbound. If you step back and talk to Frank again after you've defeated him, he will ask you if you'd like to rest, and you can talk to him, get a full heal, and it costs you nothing. The next little bit of plot here, you can go talk to the mayor. Had you talked to him earlier, he would have talked about how the sharks are a menace around town, and they would have laughed openly when you suggest that maybe you could take care of the sharks and they'll escort you out of town hall. However, once you've taken care of them, the mayor is quite thankful and will give you a key as long as he's not responsible for what you do with it. And you see DRock here going back into the drugstore. He's using the key to the shack. I'm not really sure what he's doing there, but he'll be heading to the ATM, withdrawing roughly $100 so that he can purchase burgers. These burgers are a safety item, and a safety that you most likely want to take, definitely in a race setting, but even in your early glitchless attempts, you likely want to purchase these burgers as well. These burgers will come in handy much later, as we'll see during the Titanic Ant fight, and also during the Cops fight, before we leave Onet. There's a little bit of personal preference here of how many burgers to buy. There's not really a wrong number of burgers to purchase. It's simply how much risk you're willing to take on, and most racers opt to simply fill their inventory with burgers, and that is the safest option. Once you're already purchasing burgers, it doesn't take all that long to purchase another burger. DRock opting to stutter step past these mice here. Looks like he's going to hit that door and despawn these enemies. So that's another mechanic that I haven't really quite yet explained in Earthbound. When you walk off of screen, the enemies only remain loaded on the screen for roughly 1/4 of a screen length. Everything outside of that area is unloaded, and the game does not keep track of which enemies it had and had not spawned. So when you walk back into an area, it will decide whether it needs to spawn new enemies. So abusing that fact, if you walk back and forth, you can make it so that all of the enemies on screen can disappear. Ryntrussell fighting the slugs one at a time here while DRock fights a full group of 4. Ryan was taking advantage of, and only 2 there. When there are slugs spawned on the top part of the screen, as well as on the same level as you are currently on, the game will see the group of slugs up top and decide that's the group of slugs that you're supposed to have drug into the battle with the one that you're fighting. And as a result, only one slug will actually make it to Ness. He'll fight it. He'll automatically win because he's so much more powerful than a single slug. And so he fights them one at a time. It's not a huge time save when something like that happens. It's just much less risky. You don't take any damage in the fights from the slugs. And although negligible, it does give you an ever so slightly higher chance to get a bomb drop, which is a 1 in 128 chance off of each slug group that you fight. Ryan looking like he needs to move a little bit farther right here in order to get these slugs to spawn. It looks like he was far enough over for the leftmost spawn tile. However, there's also a spawn tile directly above him that he could also be using in an attempt to get these slugs to spawn. This is the only portion of grinding that we'll see in the entire, both the boogie percent category and the entire glitchless category. So as I mentioned, this is the only grinding section we'll see in the boogie percent race. Both racers are currently attempting to get Ness up to level 8. We go to level 8 because we want to see Ness have PSI, his favorite thing. And that's an area of effect attack. It will target all enemies on screen, and that's very important to fight Titanic Ant because he has 2 Antoids with him that will life him up and heal him of any damage that we would otherwise do. Secondarily to that, the racers are also hoping that Ness gets at least 24 offense. When Ness is at level 8 and has a T-ball bat equipped, he can have 23, 24, or 25 offense. Typically, he has 24. If you're a bit unlucky, he'll have 23. And if you're extremely lucky, Ness will have 25 offense. When Ness has 24 or more offense, much as you saw Ryan fighting one slug at a time and instantly winning the fight, you can instantly win a fight against a single Antoid as well when you have 24 offense. Ryan doing a little bit more stutter stepping there to get past the mouse. That's definitely the best choice if you're very confident in your stutter stepping. Even if you're not particularly confident in your stutter stepping, one single rowdy mouse is not a terrible fight to get into. And Ryan moving up to the 3rd floor here. The advantage of farming on the 3rd floor is that slugs will spawn in groups of 6 rather than 4. I believe 26 offense is also possible, but it's very, very uncommon. DRock also finding a pack of 6 slugs on the top floor, I believe. We'll see. They may have been... No, it is 4 slugs. Occasionally, you can have 3 groups of 2 spawn in a very inconvenient pattern, easily mistaken for a pack of 6 slugs, but it turns out to be 3 slugs and 3 Antoids. So you want to be careful of that. There's a bit of knowledge there to recognize what is a pack of 6 slugs and what is 3 Antoids and 3 slugs trying to disguise themselves is what you really want. Out here on this little ledge, this butterfly is extremely likely to spawn, and you can walk on and off screen and refill Ness's psychic points and also take that opportunity to refill his life as well, which is definitely something that we're going to want to do. Now, here you can see the difference between having 23 and 24. I believe Ryan actually had 25 offense. DRock stutter stepping past these Antoids, whereas Ryan can just walk right through. Now, you'll also notice, if you're very confident in your stutter stepping and you move quickly, you will actually save time stutter stepping around those spawns. However, there's a definite risk associated with that. If you get into one of those fights, you're likely going to have to walk all the way back outside, refill Ness's life points, find a butterfly, restore your psychic points, and start all over. So we'll see how the Titanic Ant fight goes. Titanic Ant has a number of moves. He has the PSI Magnet attack, which will steal your psychic points, and you can see rather unfortunate with Ryan there. You want to have the opportunity to do at least 2 rocket attacks to do a lot of damage to Titanic Ant very quickly. Titanic Ant can also use Defense Down Alpha. That's basically the perfect move that we would hope to see because it does very little against us in that case. DRock having a very good Titanic Ant fight. Titanic Ant also has a weak attack, doing an on average 25 to 30 damage, and a strong attack, doing 40 to 50 damage. The other risk with that is Titanic Ant potentially doing a smash attack. However, it looks like both racers don't have to worry about that here. They both had fairly decent Titanic Ant fights. They're easily within 30 seconds of each other. This is still a race for either racer at this point. Another quirk of Earthbound that you'll see here, DRock walking over to get this hamburger for the cops fight and potentially for later as well. But as you walk out after you've defeated the Sanctuary boss, all the enemies are now scared of you and will run away. So you don't have to worry about trying to stutter step or despawn any of these enemies on the way out. They'll just run away from you. This cop stationed outside kind of gives you a little bit of additional plot or guidance, telling you where to go next, telling you to come to the Onet police station later, you rascal, coming into the place with a sign that says "Don't enter" out front. It's a bit faster to say that you didn't know to read the sign. That cop doesn't really seem to care for excuses much, however. So both racers had very good Titanic Ant fights. DRock opting to head straight to the cops, and I would expect Ryan to walk straight there as well. If you had a very rough Titanic Ant fight and you used all of your burgers, it's not unreasonable to go back and do a second round of purchasing those healing items. While you technically do not need any healing items to defeat the cops if you're lucky, it's definitely risky to go in there with no healing items. So these cops, what we're looking for here, they either do a regular attack or a crushing chop, and we hope to see mostly regular attacks. Crushing chops do upwards of about 30 damage to Ness. Regular attacks doing about 15. And this is another place where you can see how much risk each runner is willing to take on when each runner will opt to heal vice attacking the cop. It's generally agreed if you have less than 50 hit points that you're going to perform some kind of healing. The upper threshold is once again up for debate and up to how much risk you're willing to take on. Most runners agree if you are above 60 hit points, there's no need to heal. And yes, there is a chance that these cops can smash you, and that does roughly 44 damage. If the cops hit you when you're in the 50s and they do a crushing chop and do 30 damage, it may be beneficial to choose to do a life up instead, because a burger will not heal you all the way back to full. However, you want to be careful because you want to save 2 rockin' attacks for Captain Strong, if at all possible. That way you can use rockin' on Strong twice, and that strategy is very likely to take care of the last boss before you leave Onet. Ryan opting to use a rockin' on the last cop. It's a bit risky, but it could work out in his favor. We'll see how this goes. Very good rockin' against Strong. I think the strategy will work out for him. DRock opting to heal before he uses his rockins. Very conservative play. Ooh, and DRock with a 43 damage rockin'. That's almost the minimum that a rockin' can do. Very unlikely. Unfortunate. However, DRock with one more bash was able to take out Captain Strong. Both runners still within 30 seconds of each other. Still a very close race, and a sub 29 Onet is very respectable in a race setting. I believe that Mother 1 is on the Wii U Virtual Console, released as Earthbound Beginnings. So this house that these runners will pass here contains exit mice. They're very handy. They'll get you out of dungeons later on in the game. However, they don't really have much of a use in the Boogie Percent tournament, so you'll see both racers opting to skip that here. Ryan, once again, using a little bit of game knowledge, these mushrooms have a very small aggro radius. It's very easy to walk around these mushrooms without them attacking you. So you can see him using that to his advantage as he walks around them. However, the final pack that he had there as he walked into Tucson, and that mushroom again there, rather unfortunate. Doesn't look like he would be able to scoop past those, so he'll have to despawn them instead. DRock with the slightly better spawn luck, walking into Tucson, pulling ever so slightly ahead. This is another portion of the run where you can see there is a safe and generally used strat, and there are riskier strats here as well. Both runners opting to choose the safer strat, which is withdrawing your money in the apartment store and then saving at the phone, which we'll use for a death warp later. There are other strategies that involve either saving at the bus depot and picking up a resurrection item, or even choosing not to save at all and simply walking back through Peaceful Rest Valley. Both of these much riskier than simply taking the death warp. Yes, the expected runtime, typically from an hour 10 minutes to an hour 20 minutes. And you can see, once again, just a little bit of back and forth here. Just the luck of the spawns and their slight differences in the paths they walk, giving Ryan the smallest lead once again over DRock. In almost all cases, the death warp will be faster than walking back. In an utterly perfect walk back, it may be faster than attempting to death warp. However, it's extremely unlikely that you would actually get that kind of luck. And yes, Uko is exactly right. The mole warp is the safest option for races. So we'll see for the first time here, and we'll have to leave and come back to it, but this is Peaceful Rest Valley. There are many, many enemies that spawn in here. It's definitely taxing on the runner to try to keep track of these enemies that may appear. There are sprouts that have the similar movement pattern to mushrooms that I described earlier, and you also have UFOs that zig and zag left and right, back and forth on the screen. There are also trees that look like bushes and could easily confuse perhaps a first-time runner or a first-time player of Earthbound. Now, it may not have been easy to see, however, if you walk all the way to the north, there was a pencil blocking your path. You only need to get the pencil loaded in the game's memory. So some runners opt to actually see the pencil. Some just walk to where they know the pencil will be loaded and walk back. And when you do, AppleKid will call you and tell you that, hey, he's got a great invention that'll solve your pencil-related dilemma. Something the runners are keeping in the back of their minds as they walk through Tucson and Peaceful Rest Valley to Happy Happy Village, which is their next destination. They've used all of their psychic points in the fights against Strong, most likely, unless they had a very lucky set of cops and a strong fight. So they'll be looking for a total of 2 butterflies that they can use to replenish their psychic points and heal their life back to full in preparation for fighting cultists. Where to take those butterflies is partly up to the luck of the draw, where they happen to spawn, and There's also places that they're very likely to spawn in Peaceful Rest Valley, and even some places where they can spawn and it's impossible to walk around them. Taking an early butterfly is safer. They tend to take potentially a little bit more time if you have to chase after them. Taking the later butterfly ensures that if a butterfly blocks your path, that it isn't a time loss that you're taking, for example, a third butterfly that you don't need. Very happy to see, though, this race remaining very close. These two runners, 1 room apart. Once again, their personal best times for boogie percent are not even 1 minute apart. The race averages are just over a minute apart. Still, either runner's match. You want to be very careful, and you can see DRock playing this very safe at the top part here. Ooh. All right, it looks like he pulled through. However, I was just about to describe what happened to him very nearly. There are spawn tiles on either section of where he was just walking through, and it's easy if you need to despawn one side that you walk back and now there are enemies behind you. If you walk forward, there are enemies in front of you, and now you have nowhere left to go. So you want to be very, very fast. You want to have very good reflexes in attempting to despawn those enemies and minimize the chances of getting pincered there. Peaceful Rest Valley is a test of awareness in the game and possibly also reflexes. There's no stutter-steppable enemies in Peaceful Rest Valley. DRock, DRock opting for a very risky strategy there. It looks like it did not pay off. He attempted to get the tree caught on the large pine tree and then run around behind it and get past it. The tree is very slow, so if you get in front of it, it will not catch up to you. However, you do have to skirt past it. However, it looks like he did manage to run away. He did not take any damage or use any psychic points, so it's a time loss, but a small one. Please do not step on his neck. So this is another mechanic in Earthbound. If you significantly out-level enemies, there is a chance, and then up to a certainty, that they'll run away from you. In the boogie percent route, we are not a high enough level to guarantee that snakes will run away from us. So there's only a 75% chance that they will choose not to attack us. Ryan, quick on the draw there to see those cultists and turn right back around and walk out the door, which is very important. You do not want to get into any kind of spurious fight with these cultists. Cultists are rough enemies. They can call for help, call for more cultists, which is perhaps the biggest reason why you don't want to fight them, because they can very easily spiral out of your control. But more importantly, no matter how long that fight goes on, you cannot run away from a cultist. They have a special flag set because they are a scripted enemy. When you fight them in the course of the game, it is impossible to run away from them. Do not try to run away from the cultists. Can you smell what DRock is cooking by in that frying pan? I cannot. Ryan opting to use a Rockin' on the first round, the 2 cultists and crow fight. Typically, that is the strategy you're going to want to take, barring some very extreme circumstances. There's a small chance that you'll be able to take out either or both cultists with the damage from 1 Rockin'. However, you're very likely to use 2. If you do good damage to both cultists and they do not call for a third, you can bash them down instead and conserve your psychic points, which Ryan has opted to do here. Small chance that a crow will drop a cookie. As you can see, Ryan got one there. It's not any help in this route, just a small loss of time. DRock taking a bit of beating from these cultists, however, his second rock in there took care of them nicely. I would expect to see him to use a small healing item before he goes and fights the next cultist. Alright, that's fair. There are cookie strats for Carpainter. You can use a cookie on the turn that Carpainter is going to do lethal damage against you. You just eat one cookie and it heals you of 6 hit points, and then you sit at Carpainter with 5 or 6 hit points and hope you kill him that round, and then you're more than prepared for the Death Warp with about the smallest amount of hit points you could hope for. It can definitely be a risky strat, however. Gotta get the eggs. Or bananas. So if you're wanting more healing items, it's mostly a safety against Carpainter because you're going to be hoping that he uses lightnings that will reflect back at him to do the damage. It's the way the game kind of intends you to fight Carpainter, and it's the way that we kind of hope things go in Glitchless and Bogey Percent as well. But it's not very likely that any individual lightning strike will actually reflect back and hit Carpainter. So you want to have typically some form of healing as you go into this fight. You have a few options. There's a croissant inside of the cultist house downstairs in one of the presents. And the stand outside, you can take either the bananas or the fresh eggs, and they cost you no money whatsoever. Whatever you want to pay, and you can choose $0. The Carpainter fight is completely scripted. The first round, he's going to use a lightning attack. The second round, he's going to use a life up. He's then going to bash. He'll use a lightning attack again. He'll put up a psychic shield. He'll heal, and then he'll bash again. And that pattern will continue. Ryan opting to heal on the round before Carpainter hits him, which is probably a very good choice given that he was at 18 hit points. Very, very, very unlikely that you'll be able to heal yourself in time should you take lethal damage. Meanwhile, you can see DRock using the strategy where you heal on the round that he hits you instead. Ooh. And Ryan with a bit of bad luck against Carpainter. Looks like he'll have to walk all the way back to Carpainter. And DRock as well, down to the auto fight and unable to take out Carpainter. While it's unfortunate to see both racers die to Carpainter, they both did die to Carpainter, so as far as the race goes, it looks like Ryan is about maybe 20 to 30 seconds ahead of DRock. And as I said before, you're hoping that Carpainter will reflect lightning strikes back onto himself. Each lightning strike only has a 1 in 4 chance of actually hitting Ness and then reflecting back onto Carpainter. So again, each individual bolt has a very low chance of actually doing damage. So on this walk back through Peaceful Rest Valley, when you come back to life after you've death warped, either intentionally or unintentionally, you have no psychic points. So both runners, once again, will need to grab 2 butterflies on their way back to Peaceful Rest Valley. Since they can go right into the Carpainter fight, they could opt for just one if they wanted. However, opting for both would allow them to use Rockin' multiple times and help ensure that they could kill Carpainter on their second attempt. Ryan with similar response to DRock earlier, however, he's choosing to despawn those rather than take the risk of getting into another fight and possibly dying again. Unfortunately, dying to Carpainter is a very significant time loss. Not sure if the runners are aware that they've both died to Carpainter. Otherwise, it's easy to feel pretty dejected to have such a significant time loss. Ryan overall having a pretty easy walk back through Peaceful Rest Valley. DRock with a bit of bad luck. Yes, both racers died to Carpainter. Ryan getting right back into it. He did have a cookie last time, but he did not use it. That's right. This time leading off with 2 lightning reflects. Very high rolls, and he's taken himself out before Ness even gets in action. While that may seem nice, it's actually a little bit of a troll because now Ryan's going to attempt to Death Warp, and Ness has 123 hit points for a mole to try to get through. So that mole's going to take 3 to 4 rounds before Ness dies. So while he's through the Carpainter fight, it's still a little bit of a troll. Depending on how DRock's fight with Carpainter goes, he may yet save a little bit of time against Ryan. This may be a situation as well where Ryan could opt to instead walk back through Peaceful Rest Valley. But again, it's a risky strat, and you're very likely to lose time. However, he would recoup some of that time and not spending so long in trying to Death Warp. It's definitely still safer to go for the mole Death Warp, but we'll see what Ryan chooses to do here. DRock using his Rockins against Carpainter after he's healed. He'll definitely get a lot of damage in that way, and that is how I would lead off the fight with 30 or more psychic points for sure. And there's 1 lightning reflect on Carpainter. This other Rockin should do it. And down he goes. DRock set up a little bit better for the Death Warp, however not a lot better, because you'll see, I believe it's this level? Oh no, he already got the large level. Alright, so he's not doing too bad then. He has 70 hit points instead of 123. The level before the one he had is where you get an extra vitality point or 2, which gives you a lot of extra hit points. Ryan setting up for the Death Warp here, throwing away Paula's teddy bear, and getting rid of your defensive items so that the mole will hit Ness for more damage. And it looks like Ryan is going to opt for perhaps the UFO or Whirling Robo Death Warp. Or maybe even opting for a walk back, although I would be a little bit surprised to drop the teddy bear in that regard. So we'll see what he does here. He's walking down, and it looks like he's willing to take... Oh, it looked like he was willing to take a 2-sprout and 1 tree fight. However, the game has trolled him and only given him 1 of those mobile sprouts. And he smashes it, and now he's out of that fight. Just a little bit of bad luck there. Not much you can really do about that. An advantage to that, however, is that Paula gained a level. She'll have fire, so she can use those fire strats. Fire strats being using PSI Fire against Boogie Tent later on. And since he's headed this way, he'll get the life noodles. You can use that to revive Paula instead of going to the hospital. So a little bit of the time that he's lost here in attempting to find a good fight to Death Warp, he'll make that back and not having to walk to the hospital. DRock getting chased by a crow, but managing to get away from it. Unfortunately, fighting the spinning Robo, he does not do a lot of damage with his beam attack, and he has a lot of wasted turns as well, casting Shield Alpha or giving you a cold. DRock instead opting for the more traditional strategy of Death Warping off of a mole. The mole has a sharp claw attack, which is a very strong attack. However, unfortunately, he can also size himself up, which makes him feel strange or confused, so he may hit himself instead of you. He can stand around absent-mindedly and do nothing. So the mole can definitely troll just as well as the robo. Looks like Ryan finally finishing the death warp here. So he'll still be ahead of DRock, and keep in mind too, he has the life noodles. If he does use them, which it looks like he will be using them, then I'll save a little bit of time and not having to walk back to the hospital, which is what we will see DRock doing here. Most likely withdrawing money from the ATM so he can afford it. So, despite the poor luck, despite the unfortunateness, this is still actually a very close race. Another strat you can use here, if you want to be very safe, if you're looking at Ryan's screen, you can go upstairs in the preschool / Paula's house, and in one of those presents is a teddy bear. Typically, that's more of a safety strat for the full Earthbound glitchless run, because you're unlikely to use more than one teddy bear against Boogie Tent unless the fight is going very poorly. However, it is there, and it's an option should you want to use it. And DRock, walking underneath the chairs there in the preschool, there's exactly 1 pixel along the bottom that you can walk through there. Makes getting around the NPCs very easy as long as one of the kids doesn't manage to walk all the way down to the bottom and block your path. So this is a good point to see where each runner is. Walking into the Chaos Theater means that you've completed all of the small little events, which is reuniting Paula with her parents, talking to Everdread, getting a lot of bills, and collecting the backstage pass. DRock taking a slightly odd-looking path there. However, you want to walk that way because there is a trigger for a photo spot right outside of the Chaos Theater, and you want to walk right along the wall in order to avoid that photo trigger. If you get your photo taken, that's about I believe, a 35-second time loss. So these runners, still a very close race. Still could go to either of them. Ryan, with, I would say, a 30 to 40 second lead here. Less than a minute. Very easily made up in Earthbound. And we have the Runaway 5 cutscene here for a nice little input break. As a reminder, after this, we'll have more Earthbound, another Super Series race between Angiuna and Cerium. So if you want more Earthbound goodness, be sure to stick around for that. Hoping to see a tie in the tourney. I did once tie. That was a few years ago. It can happen, though. And the Speedrun Live bot that determines who wins will actually recognize a tie if you both finish the game within the same second. So this is another little section here. Very little RNG in this section, unless you get some very unfortunate spawns in Tucson. This is actually just more of a measure of the runner's choice and where he walks through the map and his ability to menu quickly. That's another skill, very important in Earthbound. Many runners do not realize exactly how much time they'll spend in menus and how much that adds up over time. If you spend even just a half second hesitating every time you open each menu, think of how many times you open a menu in each run and how that can add up. Taking the time to practice, remembering what's in your inventory, very important. DRock, opting for the ever so slightly faster walk, as long as you don't miss, you can actually fit in between, I believe is that Lucky of the Runaway Five? The Runaway Five man in the red suit there and the street pole. You can fit in that little space. It does save the smallest amount of time. Ryan now arriving in Threed. We'll be in Threed for a short time here. Hop over, get the last party member that we'll see in Boogie Percent, and then hop right back into Threed to finish off this race. Ryan with a little bit of unfortunate luck. Spawns in between where he needs to go in the graveyard and where he is. The graveyard itself is a very spawn-heavy place. The path that we walk through there is very intentional. Staying along the top line of the gravestones there is the least likely to present you with hazardous spawns. However, you still need to keep a sharp eye out for flies, which are very, very small enemies, easy to overlook if you have a lapse in concentration. Perhaps you're looking in chat or thinking about what you're going to do later in the run or later tonight. Very easy to get caught. They're very fast enemies, and unfortunately, they do quite a bit of damage when they attack you as well. A death at this part of the race is probably one of the least costly deaths, however. As long as you catch that trigger with the zombies up top, even if you die afterwards, you can walk right into the hotel and continue on as if nothing bad ever happened. So Ryan and DRock, very close here, following this woman into the hotel. It gets you ambushed and thrown into a prison, which leads us to our third party member, Jeff. Love him or hate him, and I personally do not care for him very much. He is a very important part of the run. Early winters, once again, very much about your ability to menu, your ability to path, move yourself in the most optimal way around the map. Once you get into Brick Road, you have to fight a protoplasm, which will, it has a meme associated with it's the hardest boss in Earthbound, and you're level 1 when you fight it, so it definitely can be very difficult to defeat if you're unlucky. But there are strats you can use to mitigate the chances of you completely losing that fight. So it will also test your ability to make decisions. We'll just take a moment here. Snowman is quite possibly my favorite theme in Earthbound, so just take a listen. Maxwell, perhaps a bit of a jerk, or perhaps he just wants you to help figure things out for yourself. He is a teacher, after all. He gives you a bent key, tells you to go use it, and it doesn't work. So you come back and he says, yeah, I didn't think that'd work. Here's a bad key machine, which can be used to open any lock, but we really only use it twice in the run. We'll then grab the Holmes hat and the pop gun. We'll equip both of those items. If you don't equip either of them, Tony will nag at you and mention that you should probably equip your stuff before leaving. But he will let you leave as long as you've grabbed the items. But you definitely want to equip them for your fights later on in Winters. And we're out. You'll also notice both runners opting to drop the spray can. It takes a little bit of time to sit through the text of dropping the spray can. However, if you do not, it is 100% certain that Jeff will fix that spray can in Winters, which is a little bit more text than just dropping it. So a small time save both runners are aware of that they can take advantage of for Boogie percent specifically. Your other option is to hold on to that spray can, fix it, and then you can actually sell it for $250, which is not insignificant even at this point in the run. In a Boogie percent setting, you could use that money. You could purchase additional bottle rockets as a safety for fighting Boogie Tent, for example. In a full glitchless run, we'll actually use that money for our purchasing of bottle rockets for future sections. So you spend the night in the tent, wake up in the morning, and it's windy out, and wouldn't you know it, it's time for Tessie. Ryan opting to walk above the tent, probably the right choice, since the Tessie Watcher was blocking his path. You cannot walk where that Tessie Watcher is, where he is standing right there. There is a photo trigger right there. You do not want to walk through there. You want to walk directly above him, or otherwise on the other side of the tent. DRock walking underneath the tent, slightly faster. However, depending on the NPC spawn, that path may or may not be available to you. Still a very close race. There's both luck and skill will play into this. So as we watch Tessie sail away here, I'll talk about just a small bit of tech in the next bit here. As I mentioned earlier, we took a special walking path back in O-Net, back around the sharks, walking above the hospital to the arcade. We're going to use a similar tactic here to avoid a goat spawn that would otherwise spawn virtually every time. So Ryan walks a little bit far out to the left and then walks back in, and that ensures that goat appears and then promptly disappears, thus ensuring he does not have to fight it. Ryan fighting, affectionately known as the hardest boss in the game. Let's see how his protoplasm fight goes. If the protoplasm bashes you 3 times and you bash it 3 times, the protoplasm will win. So as long as the protoplasm wastes its first turn, you're usually in pretty good shape. There's a very small chance that Jeff will miss. Jeff himself will hit 100% of the time with his gun. However, enemies have a chance to dodge his attack. And Jeff's speed at level 1 is very low. So Ryan passed the first protoplasm. DRock fighting the first protoplasm now with a bit of bad luck. It called for help, but it did not succeed, so it looks like DRock has also passed the protoplasm. Ryan, on our right, is attempting to set up a duck skip here. So he's trying to lure the duck down further into the path so that he does not have to fight it. However, it looks like he was unhappy with how long it was taking and chose to just fight the duck. DRock looks like he'll also be trying to get the duck skip, and the duck is playing rather nicely for him, so it wandered back up. The idea is to get the duck very far down there. DRock's got him in about the ideal position there, and you can see the time save there involved with being able to pull off that strat. Now DRock is trying to get the monkey to stop moving to lure it into getting the second proto skip. However, monkey did not play nice, and he stuck with it. Ooh, Ryan almost getting the proto skip, but monkey also not playing nice at the very last second. This makes both runners very, very close, just a few seconds apart. DRock losing a small amount of time by getting that cookie. You can see now that they're actually, it looks like, perfectly tied at the moment. Quite impressive. So at this point, it's going to come down to Mole Cave, and it's going to come down to their the strategy they choose in the Boogie tent fight. Ryan opting to stutter step past these slugs here in the last section of the first room of Pond Cave. That's probably the right choice there. That's the easiest stutter you have in the first room of the Pond Cave. DRock finally getting to that point. It looks like he'll also choose to do a stutter step. Ryan thinking of stuttering past and thinking better of it and walking back to just despawn those slugs. This is another risk versus reward scenario. You can attempt to stutter past these enemies, but you may find yourself stuck with spawns later, perhaps pincered, like in this case, DRock. Attempting to get around that mushroom, however, misjudging its aggro radius and now stuck fighting it. Ryan, as you can see, will be stuck with the same mushroom, and it looks like he is aware of it and has chosen to walk back instead. DRock, this mushroom fight is very risky. It hits Jeff very hard, and it looks like Jeff will die here. Ryan trying to stutter past the mouse. Unfortunately, it looks like he was also not successful. A mouse and slug fight is ever so slightly less risky than a mushroom, but not by much. In this case, Ryan's best bet is really to try to just run away. Looks like he will also die in that fight. Both runners looks like they're trying to maybe save a little bit of time in Pond Cave and pushing it just a bit too hard. So much as we saw earlier with both runners dying against Carpainter, that now both died in the Pond Cave once, DRock dying ever so slightly sooner this time. DRock staying at the door for a moment, deciding whether he thinks he can stutter past these enemies, and it looks like he's decided no. That slug moved rather far when he tried that stutter. Keep in mind, too, as you make mistakes, as honestly most everyone does at some point during a race, it gets easy to get flustered, easy to make wrong choices. It's very important to keep a level head. DRock tried to get past those slugs. He wound up in a red swirl. However, 2 slugs is not a very lethal fight. He'll be able to get through that, no problem. Jeff will even get another level. Not really very helpful for getting through here. However, he'll get through that individual fight. Ryan, coming into the last room and walking up, and perhaps noticed the mice a bit late. They walked pretty far towards him, but it looks like he is successful in stuttering past them. DRock also trying to stutter. It looks a bit risky, but he did manage to get through. All right, with a very good second room in the Pond Cave. And third room, he has some slugs there, and... Oop, nope. Maybe that was slugs. That was a bit hard to tell. It looks like a mouse and a mushroom, and now just a mouse. DRock, trying to get through the second room there. He kind of got himself pincered. He'll have to fight more slugs. Once again, not a very risky fight, just another time loss. Ryan has made it to where the bubble monkey will drop a rope down for you. There's still another section where he'll need to despawn enemies. However, he's very nearly out of the cave. DRock considering the stutter once again here in the second part of Pond Cave, and he saw the edge of a mushroom and has thought better of it. Meanwhile, Ryan is trying to get these mushrooms spawned to where they won't quite reach him, and he's safe. He is out of the Pond Cave. Pond Cave is definitely very that is a risk-reward type of situation. You can attempt to stutter past the enemies, and with good luck, there will be no enemies past it, and you've cleared your problem by stutter stepping. Or you can stutter step past enemies, and there are more enemies waiting for you, possibly able to be stutter stepped themselves, or possibly not. DRock cutting it as close as possible to the mushroom there. You can see it took one little step towards him and then stopped. That is absolutely the closest you can get to that enemy. But DRock into the final room of the Pond Cave here. We'll see what kind of spawns he gets up top. Ryan is getting into the Sky Runner now. The same deal here. He'll be looking to get rid of the mushrooms on top. If you have mushrooms directly to your right, that's okay. Or no mushrooms as well, that's fine. So it looks like at this point, DRock about 1 minute behind Ryan. However, there's still a few problem sections, even though there's only about 4 to 5 minutes left in this run. As the runners leave the Threed prison, there's the possibility that there will be spawns in the graveyard immediately above them that can ambush them. They need to be aware of that possibility, be quick on the trigger to despawn those enemies, or walk to get them caught on terrain. The walk down to Boogie 10 itself, there are a few landmines on the way there as well, both spawns that can appear in the middle of the city that you'll need to walk around, and spawns that can appear behind buildings and trees and catch you if you walk too closely to them, and there's no way to see them ahead of time. So you either can choose to take the slightly riskier route and just walk past them anyway, or you can take the long way around and choose to lose a few precious seconds in a race that's already so close. And the fight against Boogie Tent itself. Perhaps notoriously, Boogie Tent can choose to bash any of your party members, such as Jeff, completely ignoring the teddy bear that you're very likely to pick up. And if he takes out Jeff before Jeff's able to use his big bottle rocket, that is a lot of damage that you will not be able to do in the fight against Boogie Tent. It makes the fight very difficult to complete. It's also possible a runner desperate to save time may even pass up that teddy bear and just hope that Boogie Tent chooses not to attack them. Keep in mind as well, earlier on, one of the runners got into a fight and got an additional level on Paula, and that will also be a time save for them at this point, because that's slightly less text that the game will be processing through once you get all of that experience at the end of fighting Boogie Tent. So in the end, the racers are about 1 minute apart. However, it's still either racer's match. Minor time save here. We'll see if Ryan manages to get it. Walking up to this door. Oh, we got the door is locked text. You can actually skip that if you walk up very close to the door, but don't quite touch it. You can get within range of Jeff using the bad key machine without getting the door is locked text. Just a small time save, but a time save nonetheless. Ryan opting to play safer here, getting the teddy bear. It is definitely very risky to not get the teddy bear, so I would recommend in almost any situation to grab that teddy bear unless you are absolutely desperate for the time save. Which DRock may be, we will see. Looks like Ryan opting to walk around to the left of the sign and then to the right of the tent. Enemies can spawn behind that sign, and they can also spawn in those trees, so you want to be careful which route you take walking there. Ryan opting to Rockin' with Nest, defend with Paula, and use a big bottle rocket. Boogie not opening with a bash attack. Very, very good news for Ryan. And a big bottle rocket doing 578. That'll be it for Ryan. He'll have this level up text. He'll collect the fly honey, and that will be it. A very, very good boogie tent fight for Ryan. All that's left to do is mash out the text and collect the fly honey. DRock, indeed desperate to save the time, has chosen to skip the teddy bear. Unfortunately, it won't save him enough time, but it will save him a little bit. We'll see how close he gets. He chooses to go to the left side of the tent where there's a dog waiting for him. He just barely avoids it and gets into the fight with the tent. And Ryan finishing with an official time of 1:15:29. DRock using the chick on Boogie Tent, and big bottle rocket, not quite enough damage. And you can see there Boogie bashing Jeff. Jeff will definitely die from that kind of damage. He has no hope of surviving such an attack. However, the Rockins have a fair chance of bringing it home here for DRock. And down Tent goes. A very close race between the two runners. And you can see here Ryan going for the 3 tent glitch. You're in the very corner of the Earthbound map. It's laid out on one gigantic map, overworld and rooms. And you're in the very corner here, and when you check in that corner, you're actually checking just off the map. So your pointer for location is kind of going somewhere in memory not intended, and you can get some really interesting effects. If you're incredibly lucky, you can actually open the debug menu from there. DRock talking to the trash can. And DRock finishing with an official time of 1:17:01. Once again, a very close race for these two runners. Congratulations to Ryan on your victory. Both runners played very well for the RNG that was given to them. That's it for this race. However, following up immediately after this, we have a race between Angie Yuna and Sarium, so be sure to stick around if you want to see more Earthbound. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll be turning commentary over to Phalix1 once he's ready.
Let's see. All right. Macro is working. I will not be restricted by a push to talk button. Let's see. All right. Oh, Ari, you got to mute me. All right. There we go. I don't know. See, push to talk to me isn't really a good thing on commentary, where I'm going to be talking the whole time. I'm not going to sit here for an hour and 10 minutes and hold a button down. Those who know me know that I would not put that much effort out for anything. But our next race is going to be Angiuna and Cerium. Both two long-time runners. Want to see a little bit of blood spilled in this match? Oh, excellent. The key that I chose to macro to have pushed down also makes it to where I can't switch windows. So, a little bit of bugs, but hey, it's all right. They're not holding me back this time. I don't know. I just don't understand why some people think it's acceptable to have to hold a button down for over an hour. That's so bad on the equipment. This is a new mouse. I don't want to hurt it by having to hold a button down for so long. Ugh. But we have Yuna on the left, Cerium on the right, dictated by the wonderful names on top. Thanks to Feasel for doing all this stuff for us. Feasel is just a huge pillar in the speedrunning community. Always willing to help out folks. Alright. So I'm ready, so I'm sure that they will be good to go here pretty quickly. I hope everyone's having a lovely evening tonight, too. It's a wonderful Sunday. The weather for today's match is a cool 68 degrees, which is phenomenal for Texas. I don't know how it is. I forget where Cerium is, or in other parts of the country, it's probably nice and cool too. It's a wonderful time of year for Halloween. Boogie Tent also comes here around the Halloween time, so get a little spoopy tent there in the middle.
Here we go. Countdown started.
And 68 degrees